Awesome to have you here. This is going to be quite the session. Hi, Susan. Oh, I love having you guys. It's going to be a very powerful shift for all of us because this phase in A Course in Human Nature is very different from the wisdom part. We're going to dive deep into things we've already talked about in the first part of the course. We're going to dive deeper, and it's going to be a different approach because love is just a different place in our souls, right? Hey, welcome, Abby. We've got some new awesome students in this course. It's so gratifying. I can't wait. And welcome, everybody. So, for those of you who are first timers, we only talk via chat box in this course. So you are going to type your questions and you can ask your questions typing them whenever you want throughout the presentation. I will not be interacting with you while I'm showing the PowerPoint presentation, but we have Q&A half an hour after the session is not the session, but the PowerPoint part is finished, right? After the presentation is finished. So I will not be interacting while I'm delivering the content, but after that, I will answer all your questions. And every week I am online. I'm on Facebook in the Facebook group. And hey, Tiffany, welcome. Wonderful to have you here. We have people from different countries in this amazing journey. It's so wonderful to have you all. So I will mention some things that are part of the first part of the course, and especially the session about the levels of consciousness and the soul. But you guys will be able to understand everything. And if you don't, all you have to do is ask your questions, okay? So you will be typing your questions in the chat box, and I will read them and be interacting with you. So it's 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to shut off my video and share the screen so that we can start. Today we're going to talk about generational healing. And it's a deeper dive into the theory of family constellations and soul healing and levels of consciousness. But we are going to understand why ancestral healing, generational healing, and understanding ancestral love and understanding our love for our ancestors especially is so important to understand why sometimes our lives do not work out as well as we wish our lives would work out. And I'm going to give you a concrete example, a personal story of mine for you guys to see how this plays out. Okay, so I will start with the theory, asking what is ancestral love? What do you guys think ancestral love is? Because the answer to that is very vividly present in our everyday lives, and we tend to take it for granted because it's so powerful, yet so simple, and it seems like it is a natural state of being. But again, what we call ancestral love in a very concrete way is your physical life. So I want you guys to touch your hand, touch your face, touch your belly, touch your thighs, touch your body. When you touch your body, you know what ancestral love is because your ancestors have given you a physical body, have given you your physical life. So the answer to the question, what is ancestral love? It is literally life, your physical life in this body. It is your cells. Each and every cell of your body is an ancestral gift. It's a gift of love. It's your DNA. Everything that is present in your DNA is ancestral love. Be the happiness, be the good things, be the faults of your ancestors. Everything is love on a soul perspective. And we're going to understand how that works. Ancestral love has literally given you life. We have been given and granted life by our ancestors. So once we understand this and honor them, we start seeing life in a different way. And the more we honor our ancestors, the stronger we are, and the more our lives flow. But the question is, how do we know we are honoring our ancestors? Do we even think about them? Do we have to think about them in order to honor them? We don't have to be thinking about them all the time, because we honor our ancestors when we take care of our bodies, we take care of ourselves, and we make sure that our cells are in perfect, healthy condition in not just a physical level, but the emotional level as well. So, on a soul level, our ancestors are big and we are small. So, how do we honor them on a soul level? We um, thank them for our lives, and we don't judge them for their misfortunes and for whatever it is that they have done. Now, I know that if we are aware of our ancestors' stories, and some of them may not be very pleasant, a lot of us may not really like our ancestors' personalities and what they have done with their lives. But once we judge our ancestors, we stop honoring them. And that's a little bit where the problem begins, but we're going to talk more about this. So, the principle of hierarchy in family constellations teaches us that our ancestors are big and we are small, meaning they have given us life and we respect them and only focus on that aspect of their existence. We do not focus on their misfortunes and their personality flaws or whatever they have done. We focus on the life that has been given and granted to us. And all ancestral memories are in our DNA. So we inherit biological matter, we inherit traits and all of the biological aspects of our existence from our ancestors, but we also inherit their emotional life and their memories. They're all stored in our DNA. So we need to dive deep into the soul to understand that it's all registered in the DNA level. So we carry the memories and the experiences of our ancestors in ourselves in the DNA. And the question now is, where do the problems reside in our lives? The great deal with generational stories is that if there has been emotional pain in the lives of our ancestors, if you have had an unhappy grandmother or great grandmother or great grandfather, if one or more of your ancestors was unhappy or has led a very tough life, that is registered in your DNA. And that pain can be present in our lives in today's day and age. You may be experiencing some sort of turmoil in your life that is actually unfinished business from an ancestor, that is actually active memory or active pain on the ancestral level. So you may not have an individual experience of abuse, but you may feel abused all the time and you will start attracting abusive situations in your life. It's an electromagnetic force in the DNA. The ancestral memories are electromagnetic forces in the DNA that attract specific experiences that are reenactions of that ancestral pain. We're going to get into more detail, but it's important that you understand the mechanisms behind attracting painful experiences in our lives. If we are living a happy life, it means that we are honoring and taking the strength of our ancestors on the unconscious level. If, however, you are experiencing trouble in your life, you are electromagnetically creating that from an ancestral experience / memory that is stored on the DNA level of your cells. So how does this happen? That's the whole point of this session tonight. We have 3 levels of consciousness, and if you can take the time, you can watch the sessions on the first part of this course. It's session 1 and 2, I believe, that talk about the levels of consciousness. So we have a structure level, an individual level, and a superconscious level. The structure level is the deep unconscious mind, and it's where the ancestral memories reside. So we have a conscious mind, which is what I'm using right now to talk to you, which is the tip of the iceberg. It's what we are aware of. It's what stands above the surface of the water as a tip of the iceberg that we see. And then we have a subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is also individual, and it's the memories that are our individual memories in the womb and up until age 7. And these 2 levels are part of the individuality of each person. So our subconscious mind registers our individual experiences and judges things around us that have happened up until age 7, and may interpret things in specific ways that may be detrimental to our adult life or not, or that may be favorable, depending on the person. We're talking more about that later. But the deep unconscious mind is where the memories of our ancestors reside. And those are part of us. They're stored in our cells as well, right? So we have access to those memories if we have the proper session, if we have a proper treatment. There are ways to access that information in energy healing, in family constellations. So the deep unconscious mind that is collective stores all the information of the lives of our ancestors. And the collective soul is like an ocean that we all share. So you share the same ocean as your ancestors, as your parents, as your siblings. You are an iceberg floating on the same ocean as these people that are part of your family. So each family member is like an iceberg floating on that ocean, right? So it's the same water that is shared. And that water, which is the soul of the family, has all the information of everybody's lives before you were born. So we have access to that on the deep unconscious level. What is the point of the session tonight? If an ancestor has passed away with unfinished business, the person may die, but their pain, their emotional turmoil, their unfinished business story, say, for instance, that person had a parallel family that was a secret and no one knew about it officially. On a soul level, we know everything. So we feel the truth very vividly. What happens when a person dies, passes away with unfinished business, is that it is passed along through the DNA. So all the stories of your ancestors, if they were revealed or not, if they were official or not, they are present in your DNA. If a person died in extreme pain, in emotional frustration, the person has died, the ancestor is dead, but the emotional frustration is present and transmitted through the DNA. So often there is unconscious re-editing of painful experiences in the new generations. What happens is that we electromagnetically, because this force is present in our cells, in the DNA, we may attract the same experience as our ancestor has lived. In my experience, I have seen a lot of this, especially with sexual abuse. A girl was sexually abused at age 14, and then they had this session, energy session, and then it was revealed that the grandmother had the same experience. Only very few people knew about it. And this 14-year-old granddaughter had no idea, but attracted the experience because the cells have that memory, and then the cells attract the experience. So generational healing can really help people who are going through turmoil. I want you guys to now take a very deep breath and make a just close your eyes a little bit in silence and just let this sink in a little bit. Just breathe deep. And you'll probably had some flashes of, I don't know, an ancestor, because every time we have a session, a live session especially, it kind of works as a cardinal method session for the soul. So it's a very healing process that goes on in these Course in Human Nature sessions. Though we're focusing on the intellectual aspect and the conscious understanding of everything, a lot goes on the soul level for healing. So generational healing equals taking the strength from your ancestors. There are two types of people in the world: those who take the strength from their ancestors and those who do not, or who only take it partially. So let's say three kinds of people: those who take the strength, those who take it partially, and those who do not take the strength at all. The ones who collapse in life. So how do we take the strength, right? From our ancestors. When we live a healthy, aligned, and abundant life, we are taking their strength. However, when we deviate from our paths, when you deviate from your path of happiness, joy, and fulfillment, you are taking a different track. You are identified with the life script of an unhappy ancestor, and this is just like a law of gravity, okay? So if you look at your life right now, some areas may be beautiful and some areas may be not so good. The areas that are not so good are entangled in some sort of painful memory of an ancestor in the third and fourth generation before you. So in the researches that we do in family constellations, the grandparents and the great-grandparents are very vividly present in our lives. So whatever it is in your life that's not working out well, it has something to do with the lives of your grandparents and great-grandparents for sure. So if you're really stuck in life or in some area of life, you might be entangled with an ancestral life script. You are not living your sacred path, because by design and by nature and by divine birthright, we are all born to be happy and fulfilled. If we're not happy and fulfilled, we are entangled in an ancestral painful experience, an ancestral life script. We may be following the life script of an ancestor that we may not even know. Some people don't even know the names. But when we have a constellation, for instance, or an energy healing session, it does come up as a revelation and it is released. So the abundant stream of life flows when ancestral strength is passed on. We are aligned with life when we take the strength of our ancestors. However, a lot of people just don't pass on the strength to their descendants. And a lot of descendants don't take the strength from their ancestors. So how can we take the strength from our ancestors? What is the key to that? The first thing we need to do is to tell the truth. We tell the truth to our family members. We tell the truth to our children and grandchildren. And most of the reasons why people have very troubled lives is because there are family secrets and people don't tell the truth. And when that happens, there's short circuit in the soul, because on the deep unconscious mind, we know everything. We know the truth. But officially and consciously, we may not know the truth. And then we are following a painful life script without knowing why and not really understanding why that's happening. So a concrete example might be a woman who has triangular relationships all the time. She can never get married, and she's always the other woman of a married man. So that's a pattern, right? She is completely imprisoned in a pattern of triangular relationships. And if this woman decides to look within and to search for the root causes of that, she may find out that her grandfather had a parallel family, that he had many lovers, and she's identified with the lovers, not with her grandmother. And especially with the pain of exclusion. So once we know the truth, it's very liberating. The first thing we need to do then to take the strength is to know the truth and tell the truth. The second thing is to let go of taboos and tell the truth without judgment. Meaning, once you know the story of your ancestors, if it's far from ideal, it doesn't matter. One of the best ways to sabotage your life is to judge your ancestors. Remember their personalities and their life stories. So remember we talked about a little while ago about the principle of hierarchy and how our ancestors are big and we are small, meaning it's not up to us, it's none of our business to judge our ancestors' lives. What matters is that they have given us life, period. If there are things that our ancestors did that we believe to be immoral or taboo, like having a parallel family or losing all the money of the family, shame, any kind of judgment in that level will not allow you to take the strength of your ancestor. Because it doesn't matter what he or she did. What matters is that he or she has given you life. And you can ask any questions you want in the chat box. Make sure that you ask if it's confusing, because it needs to make sense in order for you to detangle. So no lies and no masks. This is a huge key to take ancestral strength, to really allow yourself to be strong and to allow the roots of your trees, which are your ancestors, to bring in all the nutrients. If there are lies and if people wear masks, there is no way that the strength can be passed on. So include everything, all the stories, all the experiences, include them in your heart and don't judge them. Just thank them for your life. Honor the real stories of your ancestors, not the fake stories, not the idealized images, not the lies, not the embellished versions. Honor the real stories, and you will see how strong you're going to become. Make peace with all your family stories and then move on. So what is the key to take the strength is to know the stories, tell the truth, do not judge them, and make peace with these stories. Allow them, accept them, and then you move forward. Because if you're in judgment, or if you are believing lies, or if you are fascinated with embellished, idealized stories, you're not living in the truth and you're stuck in the past. You will not be a strong person. So the more truth and the more information, the more strength the new generations will have. And when I say make peace with your ancestors' stories and the people, the ancestors themselves, I'm talking about making peace vertically and diagonally. What does that mean? Vertically means make peace with your grandparents and great-grandparents. And this is when I usually hear people say, oh, but my grandfather was a jerk. Oh, but my grandmother was a very mean woman. And my great-grandmother stole from people and this and that. It doesn't matter what they did. The past is gone. It's not our job or our place to judge their personality and whatever they did. We are in the present moment for a reason. and we should move forward. And for that to happen, we must make peace with our grandparents and great grandparents. That's a vertical line, right? It's very aligned. What is a diagonal line? It's the aunts and uncles. And I cannot even describe to you how aunts and uncles influence people, especially great aunts and great uncles, and the especially those who were in pain. If they had no descendants, if they had no children, it's very common to have an aunt who was living in a mental facility, or an uncle who was, um, you know, addicted to some sort of substance and never got married or had children. They are in the same status as our grandparents and great grandparents. So aunts and uncles are very important. And if a person has a problem in their life, and we see the field, what we call the family field, in a constellation or in an energy healing session, it's common to see that person identified or entangled with a collapsed uncle or an unhappy aunt, not necessarily a vertical line, but a diagonal line. So it's about honoring your ancestors vertically and diagonally. The best individual techniques for this, what I mean by this is to honor them. If you want to do individual techniques, if you don't want to request the help of a professional, there are two ways you can do this by yourself that work tremendously well, which are Ho'oponopono. And Ho'oponopono is a Hawaiian prayer in which we heal the past with 4 sentences, which are, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. You keep repeating that to heal the past. And it really works. And there's a version that's a longer version for ancestral healing, which I will upload for you in our Facebook group and in our website, that shows the full version for ancestral healing of Ho'oponopono. So even if you don't know the stories, you are taking your time to honor your ancestors with Ho'oponopono prayer. And I'm telling you, it works. And another technique is EFT. So I have uploaded a tutorial for EFT in our Facebook group, and you guys can check it out and do it. I do EFT daily because I believe we need to take care of our spirit, our mind, our emotions, and our bodies daily. So we take showers every day, right? And EFT is an emotional shower, meaning it's cleansing your emotional realm, your emotional dimension every single day. And I can't describe to you, you're going to become a healthier person. You're going to become a happier person, a calmer person if you practice EFT daily. So 1 round of EFT in the morning or before you go to bed or whenever you want to do it. If you do a daily practice of EFT, and if you want to focus on your ancestors, you don't have to know the whole story. You can just say, even if I might be identified with the life script of an ancestor, or even if I'm judging my ancestor, I love and accept myself fully and completely. And then you do a round of EFT. There's a tutorial in our group. So these 2 techniques really help in practical terms. Then we need to understand that the collective soul doesn't care whether a person is incarnated or not. So for the soul, for the beautiful ocean of the soul is water, right? The family soul is like water. It doesn't matter if the person is dead or alive, meaning you are here today listening to this session, and your great grandmother has probably passed away. But for the soul, you are both important. And it's important that you honor her memory. And this is the biggest catch here. For those of you who have come to Constellations at Renova, who have been in energy healing sessions, especially regarding ancestors, it may seem like the ancestors are the ones who are blocking our lives. But that's not true. What blocks our lives is our ability to judge them or not. So they are there in the soul and they have their stories. But the fundamental resistance that blocks flow and movement in our lives is the blockages of our own minds. It's how we as individuals react to our ancestors. And the most complicated part of this is it may not be conscious. It usually isn't. So you may not even know the name of your great grandmother. But on the deep unconscious level, you have the blueprint of her whole story. And if she had a painful life, that is imprinted in your cells. So unconsciously and subconsciously, you may be judging her, or you may be loyal to her pain. And you may feel like there's something you can do about it. What I mean by this is that if you have, let's say, two people, sisters, who have the same mother and father and the same ancestry, therefore the same great grandmother. One sister's life works beautifully. She does everything she wants to do. She wanted to have a career and she did. She wanted to have a husband and she did. She wanted to have children and she did. Everything happened beautifully for her. The second sister wanted all those things, but never was able to acquire them and to manifest them. Why is that? They both have the same ancestry. They both have the same memories in the cells. The reason is unconsciously, one sister acts and reacts in a different way than the other sister. Okay? And I'm going to tell you guys my personal story so that you see a concrete example of what I mean by this soon. But before I do that, I'm going to bring in a little bit of theory for you to see where I'm coming from. The first reason why we create blockages in our own minds regarding our ancestors' stories is the subconscious loyalty to ancestral pain. What does this mean? It means that we have access to our ancestors' stories, and if our grandmother was unhappy, we may be loyal to that unhappiness, meaning I will be as unhappy as my grandmother because I love her. The reason why we're talking about love in this second part of A Course in Human Nature is that we need to understand all the facets of love. So one of the ways to love our ancestors is to be loyal to their pain and not allow ourselves to be happy. That's a childish way of loving. It's an immature type of love that is very common, that we see all the time in cardinal method constellations. So the subconscious guilt of happiness is one of the blockages in our own individual minds. Our ancestors are not asking us to be unhappy, but we know that the ancestors were unhappy, so we don't dare be happy. We are following them in their pain. It's a distorted or an immature kind of love, not a very healthy love, on the contrary, that creates the guilt of happiness. The second blockage or type of blockage is subconscious arrogance, meaning we may be subconsciously judging our ancestral stories, and there is no way we can know if we're doing this or not unless we have an energy healing session or go to a family constellation. We get to know ourselves on the subconscious and unconscious level with these techniques and these modalities. So if you decide to understand the deep unconscious mind, if you make that decision, you're going to change your life because you're going to be able to highlight and see the blockages that are keeping you from living the best of life. And you cleanse your subconscious mind. I just told you about two techniques to cleanse the subconscious mind: the Ho'oponopono technique, the Ho'oponopono prayer, and EFT. But there are other ways, right? But if you do that, if you commit to that, information and new awareness will surface. And once they surface, you're starting to live in the truth and not in the secrets and the untold stories anymore. And that brings healing. there will be release and there will be relief. You'll feel emotionally stronger and healthier if you do this. Your problems have more to do with knowing yourself and where you are entangled with your ancestors, whether you are loyal to their pain or whether you're judging them. It's more important that you know your attitude towards your ancestors than knowing your ancestors. So I'm not saying that you should not know your ancestors. I'm saying that you need to know their stories. It's necessary, but it's not enough. You need to take a second, more important step, which is to know yourself on the deep unconscious level and the subconscious level, so that you know where you are creating an entanglement with your ancestral stories. So your ancestral stories may be entangled in your stories. You may be living, as I said, the life script of an ancestor. You may have attracted an unhappy marriage, and then when you start doing your soul healing process, you will find out, well, my grandmother had a terrible marriage too. So I'm going to say this again. If your life is unhappy, you're not living your divine birthright sacred path. You're not living what you were born to live, which is well-being and joy and happiness and expansion. If you're leading a painful life in any area of your life, there is an ancestral component to this. There is an ancestral interference, and it's not that your ancestors are haunting you. It's the fact that their memories are in your cells and DNA, and they may be active in the negative way. And there are ways to heal this. So how do you live your own personal experiences and not the experiences of your ancestors? How do you do this? How do you live an original life and not a reenaction of a painful life script of an ancestor? It's practical and easy to find out, okay? You know that your stories are really yours when you are happy. That's it. It's simple. When you're happy, you're living authentically. When you're happy, you're living your sacred path. When you're happy, you are taking the strength of your ancestors. However, when your stories are reenacting ancestral pain, you're not happy. That's a deviation of your sacred path. So, your stories, when they're reenacting ancestral pain, you are not happy. So, it's easy to see. If you're not happy, you are just repeating a painful story of your ancestor. This is like the law of gravity. Now, you don't know which ancestor, and we don't suppose things theoretically. Family constellations, it's a very, very phenomenological modality. What does that mean? We don't suppose, we don't create theories. We need to see the field to understand, meaning you need to have a session, or if you don't want to have a session, you can do EFT and Ho'oponopono, and regardless of knowing the stories, you're taking practical steps to release whatever painful experience is going on. So we may be unconsciously repeating ancestral pain in one or more areas of life. That's why in the Cardinal Method sessions, I always say, what can improve in your life? And it doesn't have to be just one thing. It could be financial and emotional and professional. It could be three things, because in three areas of life, you are stuck or you're imprisoned in some sort of ancestral pain. Or it could be just one story. A person may be very happy and fulfilled professionally and financially, but he wants a partner and he never can get married, and he wishes he could, but he doesn't. So there's emotional issues going on, right? Or someone is very happy emotionally, but financially unhappy. I'm going to give you now my personal story example so that you know exactly what I'm talking about in a concrete way. We've talked about the theory, but now I'm going to bring in some personal story information so that you know what I'm talking about. And the whole reason why the cardinal method was created is not the intellectual aspect of my life, but it's the soul healing journey that I went through. Because on the emotional level, I went through hell and got out of it. And that's why I created this course in human nature and the cardinal method in the first place. It was because I know I can help people get out of their emotional hells, for lack of a better word. Not just emotional, but any kind of area that is not ideal, that is not happy and fulfilled. So, my personal story is I was very happy and fulfilled on a professional level, on a career level, but I was emotionally a wreck. And nobody knew about it until I got divorced from my first husband. So, let me go back a little bit in time and tell you what is the whole story in terms of my emotional path. Between ages 13 and 17, which is when when girls and boys are teenagers and want to be with other girls and boys and experience, I had a deep fear of relationships. I did not allow any boy to touch me. I had this fantasy that I was going to marry Axl Rose, which is a rocker from the 90s. So it was this teenage fantasy. And I convinced myself that because I was going to get married to this rock star, I didn't need to let any boy touch me. Now, after a lot of therapy, now I understand what was going on. I had never been physically abused or sexually abused, but I was scared of being raped and I was scared of being hurt by men for no reason because I did not have an individual experience of painful love relationships. What does a 13-year-old girl know about love relationships, right? Why was I so scared of boys? I used to wear my father's pajamas to school. I wanted to cover my body and I would shave half of my head. I didn't want to be beautiful because if I were beautiful, I would be raped. I had this crazy fear. And I later, much later in life, only after family constellations, which we'll get to soon, I understood that there was a lot of ancestral sexual abuse in my family. And I did not know that officially. I found out on my own after dozens of years of therapy until I finally found the constellations. And it all made sense. So the beginning of my emotional life was fear of relationships. No boy could touch me between the ages 13 to 17. I had the imaginary rock star boyfriend. And then between ages 17 and 27, I had my first painful relationship, which was my first husband. So we started dating when I was 17. So when I was 17, I finally decided I would allow a man to touch me. He looked exactly like Axl Rose for that matter, only he was Brazilian. So he was the Brazilian Axl Rose version. And for 7 years, we dated. And we got married when I was 24 and divorced when I was 27. And I was skyrocketing in my career, and I did not pay attention to the emotional abuse I was going through in that relationship. Only after I got married, I started seeing that I was being emotionally abused, and I started developing panic attacks. So I went to the psychologist. And after 2 years with the help of the psychologist, I was able to end the marriage. So it was a very painful relationship. And my parents have been married for over 40 years. They have a pretty happy marriage. So why on earth did I attract this painful relationship? Because of ancestral memories in my cells. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But what happened then I finally got divorced, so I was supposedly free, and all I wanted to do was to get married and have children and be happy in a committed relationship, which didn't happen in the first marriage. So between the ages 27 to 29, I had two short-term relationships that were the opposite of ideal. All I wanted was a committed, loving relationship, and the guys that I attracted, both of them, they did not want any of the things that I wanted. So why on earth was I attracting again men that made me unhappy? Right? That was the big question. When I was 29, I started a relationship that lasted 4 years. It was a long distance relationship, which already in itself is dysfunctional, right? I tell everybody that walks into this space here at Renova, if you're in a long distance relationship, you are in a dysfunctional relationship, period. Because I've been through one and I know the details of how dysfunctional it is. So I wanted to get married and have children and be happy, and I attracted a long distance relationship with a person who did not want the same things that I did, though he did say that he did want those things. In truth, he did not. So I was doing my PhD thesis. We agreed that for 4 years we would study and finish the PhD, and then we would get married and have kids. And I fulfilled my part of the contract, so to speak. I finished the PhD thesis. I got a position as a professor in the university. I got the home, and I waited for him to come from Europe to Brazil so we could get married and have kids. And what he did after 4 years was to say, "Oh, I don't want this. I don't think I want this. Yeah, I think I'm going to stay here and we should just continue being in a long distance relationship." So I freaked out. I went berserk. I thought I was going to die. I almost took psychiatric pills because I never hit rock bottom as much as that episode. And I ended the relationship. So I said, okay, I am a total emotional failure. I'm an emotional wreck. Why on earth do I want the things that I don't attract? Why do I not attract what I want? Right? So the big question I asked myself was, what is it in my inner world that is attracting these painful love relationships? And this is where I want you guys to really hold your hearts and pay attention to whatever it is that you're living. It doesn't have to be an emotional thing. It could be financial or whatever it is, or professional, or maybe it's nothing, but maybe you know people who need this kind of help. It's not the other person's fault, okay? I attracted an abusive first husband. I attracted the two men who did not want to commit. I attracted the long distance relationship guy who did not want to commit either. So there was something in my inner world that needed healing because I was creating what I did not want. Why on earth was that happening? So I did search for solutions even before this 31-year-old episode of the second failure of a relationship, who I call my second husband, because for the soul, if you have a long-term relationship, for the soul, it's a husband. It doesn't have to be a real marriage, like an official marriage. So I searched for metaphysical studies and tarot reading at age 21 because I was already dating my first husband. Between ages 17 and 21, I had already had plenty of emotional abuse, but I didn't acknowledge it as emotional abuse, but I wanted to understand why I was so unhappy. So I searched for metaphysical studies and tarot reading, which was immensely helpful. Started at age 21 and still strong today, right? In today's day and age in my life. At age 21, I dove deep into the Enneagram, which helped me immensely understand my personality, my individual level. Though for over 10 years, I was in the wrong type. I was, quote, diagnosed as a wrong type. And then I understood what I was. And the Enneagram is one of the most powerful know thyself mechanisms that I know. It's one of the most powerful, deep, serious, effective systems that I know. And there is a session about the Enneagram in part 1 of this course. If you guys search for the prior sessions, you can go there. And we're going to tap into the Enneagram again in the second part of the course as well. So The metaphysical studies and the tarot reading helped me immensely understand myself as an individual, the Enneagram even more on the personality level. And then I got married at age 24 and I started having the panic attacks when I was 25. So I searched for help and I went to behavioral psychology. So between the ages of 26 and 29, I would go every week and then bi-weekly to the psychologist. I really invested in myself for 4 years to understand what in my inner world was creating the painful experiences. And this professional was also a transpersonal psychologist. So for 4 years, I also engaged in transpersonal psychology, which was amazing. And it literally saved my life when I was going through those turmoils in those ages. Also, when I started with my PhD thesis, I dove deep into shamanism, and not just in the intellectual level of understanding a Native American wisdom, but shamanism big time. So it started with age 27 and it's still growing strong until today. I'm 41 years old, if you guys don't know that. And I did a lot of past life regression therapy when I was 28 because I wanted to understand, why was I suffering? Why did I attract a first husband that was so abusive and I had to divorce? Why did I attract those two men in the short-term relationships who did not want to have anything to do with me, who did not want to be monogamous and who did not want a family and did not want to get married? And then when I was almost dying of pain with the second failed relationship, I found family constellations. I had heard about it, I had read a little bit about it, but I dove deep into it when I was 31, and it was the greatest system to heal emotional pain that ever came into my life, because it was what brought the fastest shifts. It was what brought the biggest, most dramatic changes in my life. That's the whole reason why I'm bringing this to you when I talk about love and why we need generational healing in order to live fully and completely and to love ourselves more. Because ancestral healing created the most dramatic and fast shifts in my life. I'm not saying that the other modalities didn't help. They helped immensely, and I still use them a lot to this day. But I do not know anything more efficient than ancestral healing to deepen the soul level and the DNA level, heal a person's life. It was my experience, and I've seen it with thousands of people now. Okay, so the painful patterns changed really fast in my life. I was 31 when I started my constellation training because I had a session, and then in that same week, my facilitator was teaching it. She was starting a whole training for a year, and I just dove deep into that. The first session was so powerful that I decided that I would just be taking the whole course. And the painful patterns started changing really fast. Concrete example. The painful relationship number 2, the long distance relationship with a guy in Europe, ended in less than a year. The more I worked with the constellations, I was there every week for constellation work. And in less than a year, it ended. I stopped living an illusion and I stopped believing lies. A healthy new relationship manifested in less than 2 weeks. So for those of you who don't know my husband, this is Ronald. This is the first picture we ever took together. Listen, I broke up with the guy in Europe. And 2 weeks later, I met my husband, who I considered my third husband. And we've been together for over 8 years now. And he is a completely different pattern. He is a healthy relationship. He is a good man. And when we met, he told me, you need to come back to life. That's what he said, because I did not have a TV. My phone was ridiculous. It was an old BlackBerry, and iPhones were already in the world and I didn't care. And he said, listen, you have to go back to life. That's why the cardinal method is called the cardinal method of life connection, because I went back to life connection when I met him. And it was all a result of working with my soul. And I have to be honest with you, it was after the ancestral healing that life started to happen for me. So after I met Ronald, less than 2 years later, we moved to another country and I changed careers. And soul healing became my new career. So when we moved here, it was because of his job, and I was going to be working at not working at I was going to research Native Americans in the University of Miami in a postdoctoral research. And the body talk system was interested in the cardinal method, and all these beautiful things started happening really fast in Florida. And this is the first picture I ever took of Renova in the very beginning. That's April 15th, 2015, almost 5 years ago. And it all happened in less than 2 years. So moving to another country and changing careers with the men that I always wanted to have in my life all happened because of ancestral healing. I don't know if this would have happened if I had not done ancestral healing. I would probably be still entangled in those painful patterns. So what was blocking my happiness, joy, and expansion? And I like to use the image of medieval walls or Roman walls, because that's exactly what it is in our psyches. This is a good symbol of our minds when we have blockages, okay? We have these medieval walls that don't allow abundance in happiness and joy and expansion. So what was it in my inner world that was blocking my happiness, joy, and expansion? I'm going to share with you what I found out about myself with the ancestral healing and family constellation processes. And the cardinal method flourished from this, I don't want to say diagnosis, but from this revelation, from this understanding, whatever it is that we can call it. My first problem was that unconsciously I was loyal to unhappy female ancestors. I found out that my grandmothers and great-grandmothers and before them, they were all very unhappy women. They hated their marriages. So I was attracting terrible relationships because I was loyal to their pain. That's the immature love of the child. That's my inner world content that was attracting the terrible experiences. That's one of the things that I found out. Problem number 2, in my case, and this is my story, was deep judgment of male ancestors. We know the truth in ourselves, right? We have all our ancestral memories in ourselves. So I found out after many constellations that I hated my male ancestors, and I was attracting the exact type of behavior that they had in the men that were in my life. Remember, it's an electromagnetic force that lives in our DNA. So we attract experiences into our energy field. And I was not honoring my male ancestors. I was angry with them because they had triangular relationships, because they made my grandmothers and great-grandmothers unhappy, for many reasons. So once I found out that I did not have to be loyal to the pain of the females, and that it was none of my business to judge my male ancestors. What mattered was that they had given me life, period. My life started to change. So with this awareness, I slowly started creating my life from the superconscious level. The superconscious level is what creates our future. It's what creates new things in the world. It's what brings our lives to a whole new level of existence. It's the expansion aspect of life. And we do not reach or tap into the superconscious level of our minds if we are trapped in the deep unconscious ancestral pain. So we all have an inner presence, which is also the infinite mind. And the infinite mind does not function if we are trapped in these painful memories. And the infinite mind knows only abundance. So if we only know scarcity, it's because we are trapped in the past painful relationships, experiences, and stories of our ancestors. So what I have to tell you guys tonight is to focus on the abundance of life that flows from this super consciousness and from that level of the mind. Focus on the abundance, not on the lack. Focus on what you can create and not on what your ancestors have lived, especially if they were painful experiences. So claim your divine heritage. Claim your divine birthright to be happy. You don't have to repeat the painful experiences of your ancestors. And if something in your life is not working, you're doing this unconsciously, and you can release yourself from it. Finding the causes of our problems breaks the vicious cycles. So remember my story. Painful fear of relationships in my teenage days. Then I found a man that brought a lot of pain to my life. Then 2 other relationships that were short-term that were painful. Then another 4-year relationship that I thought it was going to be the man of my dreams for the rest of my life. Terrible experience. Until I healed my soul on the ancestral level, I had not found a healthy relationship. And 2 weeks after I broke up with the wrong man, I found the right man. So I did break a vicious cycle. And I know everybody can do that. If you commit to your happiness, the answers will come. The tools will be in your path. You will be able to break the cycles. We are not in this world to suffer. That is not the reason we are born. We are not here to pay off our karma. We are not here to compensate for our ancestors' mistakes. We are born to expand in consciousness. And if we're not doing that, expand in consciousness means live in abundance and live in happiness. So if we're not doing that, we are trapped in ancestral pain. Going beyond our ancestors is all about moving towards expansion. It's about moving forward, not being stuck in the past. So what I have to tell you guys is to make peace with the experiences of your ancestors. If you know their stories and their stories are far from ideal, don't focus on the lack and don't focus on the pain and don't focus on the shame. Just make peace with the experiences of your ancestors and you will make peace with yourselves because their experiences are present in your cells. Make peace with your present moment reality. Be happy with who you are right now. And if you're going through turmoil, if you're going through things that are far from ideal in the present moment, commit to do something about it and know that help is on the way. The moment you commit, the modalities, the people, the professionals, the friends, the new energies will start coming into your life. And then you can be happy. So this is the reason we're born. Be happy. Do everything in your power to be happy. And if you have to investigate the past in order to free yourself, do it. But you don't want to live in the past and dwell in the past. This is very important. There are practical things that you can do. When you start understanding your ancestral stories, you're doing that to free yourself from the past and to move forward into the future. You're not doing that to blame your ancestors. This is pretty typical and kind of common in constellation communities, sadly. Some people will find the perfect excuse for their unhappiness. Oh, my life collapsed because my grandmother did this or my grandfather did that. So it's their fault. And I'm just paying for their mistakes. Do not fall into this trap, okay? The reason why you're going through turmoil is because your mind is engaged in the negative aspect of your ancestors and not in the life that has been given to you. So there are practical things that you can do that will improve your life quality. The first is to learn as much as possible about the stories of your ancestors. Find out their names. Find out what they did. Find out if they were happy, if they were unhappy. What are the stories? I guarantee to you, the more you know about your family ancestry, the richer your inner world will be and the more sense things will make. Because on the deep unconscious level, we know everything. But officially, we don't. There are so many taboos. There are so many shameful stories. There are so many secrets. And there's so many things people don't want to talk about. Whatever it is that your ancestors did, if your grandfather had a parallel family, if your great-grandfather lost all the money in the family, it doesn't matter. Know the stories. The glory and the failure and the shame, they are all sacred. They are all part of yourselves. They are all making you strong. It doesn't have to be judged as good or bad. You just have to know those stories and honor them. The second thing that's important is if you have a serious problem in your life right now, if you have a sickness, if you have a health issue, if you're dealing with anything in your appearance with your body, if you're dealing with anything regarding your home or your professional life or your finances or your emotional life or your family life or your personal fulfillment, if you have a serious problem, find a trusted soul healing professional to help you. I did this. You guys saw how all the types of therapies that I went through and how dedicated I was to heal my inner world. And I'm not saying this to not to encourage you to say, oh, you're going to have to go through a lot. You can shorten your learning curve. You can search for people right now. Today, in the 21st century, we have so many new energy healing modalities, and things can shift really fast, much faster than they did for me in my 20s and 30s. So I really recommend you find a trusted professional to address your issue and make sure you include generational healing in your process. Third of all, this is important, and people get a little surprised when I say this, but you have no idea how powerful this is. Have old family pictures in a photo album, okay? So if you have ancestral pictures, old pictures of people from the 19th century, Feng Shui will tell you this. Do not put these in frames. Put these in photo albums. Some people have these pictures in boxes, and the middle path, meeting things halfway, I believe, this is my suggestion, is to honor your ancestors by putting their pictures in a photo album, not in a picture frame in your home, because pictures have so much energy and they emanate so much energy. And the Feng Shui, if you want to be literal in Feng Shui, they recommend you change the pictures in your frames every year so that you're updated with the present moment. So people who have all these old pictures of their kids when they're 2 and now the kid is 32, Feng Shui will recommend that you have a picture of your son or daughter at age 32 in the present moment, and not baby pictures. So baby pictures belong in photo albums and ancestral pictures as well. That's what I recommend to you. You honor them, but you keep them in the past. And some people will ask me, what about paintings, right? If you have the painting of an ancestor. In my observations, it's different. A painting is different from a photograph. A painting does not have the same charge to be creating the present moment reality as a picture. That's my opinion, and that's what I observe empirically with my research. So live the present moment. This is what generational healing gives to you as a gift. You heal the past so that you can live the present moment in bliss. All right. So thank you. And let's talk now. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Let's go back to you guys. You guys can ask your questions in the chat box. Let's see. What if you don't know their stories? So Tiffany's asking, what if you don't know their stories? There are ways to find out. We usually have old aunts and uncles, but we can find out even if with government documents. There are ways to try to find out and try to build your family tree. So I recommend, you guys, it's the craziest, most powerful thing. Once you start jotting down the names, if you just do this, write your name and your parents' names and your grandparents' names and great-grandparents, just writing their names down, creating a family tree is already very powerful for soul healing. You're going to start including your ancestors in your life. If you don't know their stories, you can try to find out. You can try to find, archives or, see if you can find an old family member. Latin cultures, I'm from Brazil, so we love that kind of thing. But Anglo-Saxon cultures are more reserved. They tend to not know so much or not want to know so much. And I really recommend you start doing that. That is part of your present moment reality, which is to find out the stories of your ancestors and see who you can ask. Okay, so that's one thing that I truly highly recommend. Let's see who else has a question. Was this clear? Is there anything specific you guys want to ask me about what was just delivered? I know it's a lot to take in, and there are 2 other sessions in part 1 of the course that you guys can look at, but for tonight, which was literally a Cardinal Method session for all of us, how did it feel? How do you guys want to share this? When we share our stories, the reason why I shared my personal story is because in the Native American session, I talk about this. The Native Americans believe that human souls are healed with stories and animals. So animals heal the soul. Power animals have specific attributes to heal the soul, and so do stories. So our personal stories heal other people. And in this love module, oh, hi, Abby. Wow, yeah. So some of you guys have been with me from the very beginning a year ago, and some of you have just hopped in the course. And the love part is very different from the wisdom part. So part 1 was about wisdom. You guys are going to see it's very intellectual and very brainy. And it has to be, because we need that kind of rational structure for mature love to flourish on. If we don't have wisdom, our love is childish. So there's a reason why we have wisdom before love in the Course in Human Nature. And this love part now is very different from the wisdom part. So you're going to see me sharing a lot of my personal stories. And throughout the weeks, every Wednesday, I'm going to be putting a content on the Facebook group and also on the website. And I will share with you a lot more. Okay, so it's going to be very different. Do you do the Enneagram with clients? Tiffany's asking me. Yes, the Enneagram requires a lot of soul searching and a long time. So what I do is I tell people, if you want to work with the Enneagram and me, the Course in Human Nature Part 1 has an Enneagram session. And then I recommend you listen to the audiobook by Richard Rizzo, which is by far, in my opinion, there's so many Enneagram authors, but there are few that I really recommend and that I trust, because the Enneagram is more than 5,000 years old. And some people have done a lot of damage to that sacred knowledge. So Don Rizzo and Helen Palmer are the ones that I trust. And there is if you want to work with the Enneagram, you need to get a little intellectual, and I will for sure be a guide by your side if that's where you want to go. But I will ask you to watch that session and to then listen to the audiobook by Richard Rizzo, which I'll send to you. And then we can have an Enneagram session. It's not something that I usually dive in with clients, but a few clients want it and it happens, but it's not even in my website. There are things that are not even in the website, like the Sacred Path journey that I do and the Enneagram as well, Tiffany. But if you're interested, for sure, we can talk about that and do a dive into the Enneagram. Okay. Kristen, thank you for sharing your story. Yeah. We have the Course in Human Nature in Portuguese with the Brazilian group at 5 p.m. And then we have the English version with the international group at 7. So the Brazilians were like, oh, you're telling your story. I've known you for years and it's the first time you're telling your story. Yes, it is the first time I tell my story in public like that. Yeah. As you healed your life, did you notice peripheral healing in your family also? Yes, you have no idea, Chris. And let me just give you one information. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of my cousins and aunts became energy healing practitioners after I did the constellation training and after I became a family constellation facilitator and created the Cardinal Method. 2 aunts have become energy healing practitioners and 2 cousins and several of I have hundreds of relatives. Okay. My mom's, my grandma had 12 siblings and I had like 50 cousins and it's like 120 people in Brazil. I was just with them in December. So easily hundreds, over 100 people. So in over 100 people, I have noticed at least 30 people changing their lives immensely. So yes, very much so. And some of them became energy healing practitioners. So it's incredible. Tiffany says, thank you. Cool. So Tiffany, we can talk about the Enneagram. I believe you'll love it. Okay. It's the kind of thing that for you, it's going to work beautifully. So we can talk about that. And Susan, so powerful and interesting how our ancestors can influence our lives. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I used to be mad at them and judge them for the way they lived. Guilty. I did that until I was 31 and I didn't know I was doing that so intensely. But yeah, we can be consciously very nice, but unconsciously we can be hating our ancestors, right? I had no idea how much I hated my grandfathers. And I loved them on a surface level, on a social level, but on a soul level, I hated them. And okay, so through Cardinal Method, I've been able to honor them and forgive them. I'm so happy, Susan. I know, because I see your progress. I'm witnessing. It's beautiful. Yeah, I'm so glad to read this. Abby is saying, I would be interested in the audiobook as well, please. Yeah, absolutely. So we in the Course in Human Nature 1, there's the Enneagram class that I suggest you guys all go to, that you watch that. There is a Know Thyself exercise that you can do for the Enneagram, and there are 5 references there. But I will send you the link for the audiobook, okay? Both Tiffany and Abby, I will send it after we finish tonight. I'm going to send it to you. You are going to love it. It's life-changing. It really is incredibly powerful. I love this book, and I will send it to you as soon as we finish this session, okay? Kristen, it looks like you healed your whole family. That's what some people say. But what I believe is that the soul was ready to heal. And the soul, this is the thing about constellations. And Kristen, you asked a question in the course of the Cardinal Method practitioners that I love that question. And I'm going to mention it now to comment on what you said. When the collective soul, when that ocean is ready to heal, they will find the most sensitive iceberg to get that healing going, to burst the bubble. Okay. So I think I was that sensitive person that burst the bubble, but the soul healed itself on a collective level. I don't think I healed the family soul. I think I was the one who burst the bubble, but the soul healed itself. The collective soul healed itself, so much so that other members started, and even, it took a while. It was only last year, I believe, that my mom finally went to a constellation on her own. So it took years. It really did take years, but I am so persistent in soul healing. And if there's something that I want to leave as a legacy to everybody who's come to Renova, be persistent with your healing. There are people who come here episodically and, one constellation and they're out of here. Sometimes that's all they need. But those who are persistent with their soul healing lead meaningful lives, help their whole families, and are much happier. So I was persistent, and then the soul, enlarged itself and started healing through different individuals. But I don't think I healed the family soul. I think the family soul healed itself through specific members. Does that make sense? Kristen, please let me know if that makes sense. Abby is saying, it's so interesting the things I've realized about my ancestors and how I unknowingly feel and felt about them just from this session. I love this. I tell everybody, enroll in a course in human nature, because seriously, it's a 90-minute theory part, which is a live session, which really has the power of a cardinal method session. And then you have the know thyself exercises, which will take less than 90 minutes. So it's 3 hours a month for soul healing. I tell people this is like a gym for the soul. It's a membership, which is a gym for the soul, but you only work out for 3 hours a month. It's not so bad, right? And then you watch the unfoldings of the healing throughout the month. So yeah, I'm so glad you experienced this in this live session, because that's the whole purpose of the course. Kristen, you are a conduit for the healing that the family soul was ready for. Somebody had to do it. Yeah, that I so agree. And Kristen, you're being that person in your family too, right? You are, exactly. And I love to see this. We are creating a community of soul healing bubble busters, arrowheads, whatever it is that we want to call ourselves. And in the cardinal method, I love the image of the arrow, right? Because your parents and your ancestors are the arrow and you are the bow. This is actually in this book. Hold on. This one. And I made a drawing of this in the Constellation chapter. And this is really what this whole session tonight is about. Okay, so it's chapter 3. Chapter 3, Family Constellations. And there are 2 illustrations that I want to show you. Hold on. There is a tree and there is an arrow. Okay, the arrow is in Native American wisdom. Oh, the tree is here. Yeah. Okay. So see if you guys can see this. The light is terrible. The expansion is life, which is the leaves of the tree. Your parents are the trunk and your ancestors are the roots. So this is page 81 in the book, The Cardinal Method of Life Connection. And in Native American wisdom, I have the arrow picture, yeah, right here. See? And that's page 104. So you guys can check that out as well. There's another question. Is that what is happening when there is a black sheep or a family outcast? I love this question. I'm so glad you asked this question, Abby. Bert Hellinger, the creator of Family Constellations, used to say that if you want to know the whole story of a family, look at the black sheep. The black sheep will give you all the information. So the black sheep of the family is, or the scapegoat or whatever, the people who collapse are the ones who tell the truth of the family's history. In my case, I was the emotional black sheep because in my father's side, there are 9 girls, so I have 8 cousins, and 5 or 6 of us are the same age, and they all got married and had kids, and I was the only one who was collapsing, getting divorced, and going into another failed relationship, and who didn't have kids. So I was the emotional black sheep. I was the professional whiz, the one who had the career, but the one who failed in marriage. And my story, my emotional story, is the black sheep story of the family, right? It told the shadow side of the family, the excluded information that was not allowing me to take the strength. But on my part, when it comes to taking my responsibility, of all my cousins, I was the only one who was judging, who was loyal to the women, and who was judging the men. The other ones were more immune. And there is a theory that says it is like the law of gravity. If there is a lot of damage in a family, if there is a lot of misconduct, the new generations will, someone in the new generation will collapse. Someone will represent that shadow side of the family. That sometimes happens in childhood disease, genetic disorders. I would love to have more people research the soul aspect of biology when it comes to childhood disease, children with cancer and children with neurological disorders or DNA or genetic disorders, because there is always a family story behind a physical symptom. Always, only 100% of the time. But there are not enough people researching this in the health area, in the physical health area. There will be soon, hopefully, right? Maybe we'll find some people interested in this very soon. I think the 21st century has so much awesomeness awaiting, but that's something that I've noticed a lot. Okay, great. So I think I have answered all your questions. If you have any further questions, we still have 5 minutes. Mental illness, more so, even more so, Susan, in my honest opinion and experience and research, mental illness means there is unfinished business, there are untold stories, there are dishonored members in a family's soul that lead to a mental illness in a person and a child of a new generation. Absolutely. And the people who heal the most when we do a lot of ancestral healing are the ones with mental illness. They improve immensely. And there's Bert Hellinger, the creative Constellations, he has very specific theories about mental illness. And one of them is schizophrenia specifically. Whenever there's schizophrenia, especially severe schizophrenia in the family, he would ask, he's passed away, right? You guys know he passed away in September of last year. He would ask one single question when the issue or the theme of the constellation was schizophrenia. He would ask, who murdered who? Because the schizophrenic person has a split soul, and that person is identified with both the killer and the victim. So there has been a murder in the family. In specific constellation literature, traditional constellation, that's what it is. Okay? Kristen is asking, I thought it was interesting that one of the early scenes in the new Star Wars movie is that the Festival of the Ancestors, and that there were other aspects of ancestral healing that were present. I don't want to spoil the story. Oh, I love movies as catalyzers of soul healing. Movies are stories, and stories heal the soul, right? So in my training, movies play a huge role. And I have, in this love part of the course, of course, in human nature, I'm suggesting movies. If you guys saw the last session about abundance, universal abundance, there are movies there that I suggest. And And I want to look into that, Kristen. I will pay close attention. Thank you for this. This is great. Maybe you can suggest something in the Facebook group about that and just share that, because that's awesome. And Susan's asking, what about bipolar? Bipolar is not such a laser beam specific story in constellations. Bipolar people are, there is conflict in the family. There is probably a heavy shadow story, but there is no specific singular theory with bipolar disorder. Okay. All right. Any further questions? We still have 2 minutes. I know it was a lot, but it was so powerful and beautiful. You guys know that for those of you who are new, we have to upload and treat the video for this to become the final recording that we upload in the website that you can rewatch as many times as you want. So it usually takes 48 hours. Okay. So we have the live session on Thursday, and usually by Friday night or Saturday morning, you guys will, sometimes before, you guys will have the uploaded material. So remember this, every session is threefold. 1/3 is knowledge, which is the live session, which is what we just had. The second third, the second unfolding, is knowledge of self, which is to do the know thyself exercises after the session. Make sure you do that. Otherwise, if you just watch the live session, you're only taking 1/3 of the potential. So the live session is knowledge, 1/3. The know thyself exercises are knowledge of self, which means you go into your inner world and you digest the theory and you apply it to your own personal life. So it's knowing yourself. And the third is self-transformation, meaning after you know yourself, you start acting differently and you start changing your life. That's the structure of the Course in Human Nature. All right. And it works as a Cardinal Method session, as I said, every month, and it's awesome. So we only open for enrollment on December, January, and February. So if you guys know people who will benefit, who want to join us on the ride, on this road and this journey, let them know that the course is open for enrollment only until February. Then we close enrollment. We open briefly on July, which is very strategic in the path, in the journey of the course. We accept new members in July as well. And then we close again until the end of the second part. All right. So just so you know, wisdom, love, and power. Wisdom creates the structure for love to flourish in a mature way. And the synthesis of wisdom and love is power, which awaits us only next year. So we have a beautiful road ahead of us. And I'm so grateful for everybody who's here tonight. And for those of you who can't be online on the live sessions and watch the sessions later, love having you here. And I'll be seeing you on Wednesdays in the mornings. I'm always uploading some new comment or something about the prior session. So every week we have some interaction in the Facebook group as well. So if you haven't yet been added to the Facebook group, make sure that you ask to be added. And if you have, there's a lot of stuff there, so you can also dig in. Okay? Thank you so much, everybody. Love you all. It's just the most awesome thing on the planet. To me, I want to thank you for making my dream come true, because I love this. This makes my life happy. And having you guys is just so cool. So thank you. Love you all. I will see you guys soon. Ask any questions you want, and I'll be sending the Enneagram audiobook to all 4 of you guys who are here live with me right now. All right? No, Abby, it's not the same Facebook group as the practitioners course. It's a different Facebook group. We have 3 groups on Facebook. Crystals and Chakras, which we'll have live sessions soon, and you guys are going to receive the email. The Crystals and Chakras course has a specific group. The Course in Human Nature, this one, has a group that's bilingual. So I upload videos in Portuguese and English. And the practitioners group is a totally different group, okay? So thank you for being you. Thank you for being you, Kristen. So cool to have you in my life. So, Abby, there are 3 groups, and you're probably just in the practitioners group. So, ask to be added to crystals and chakras, and I'm going to add you. I'm going to do this now, and to the course in human nature. Okay, I'm going to do this now, and I'll send you guys the Enneagram audiobook. Okay, love you all. See you soon. Have a beautiful night and take good care. Bye bye.